Thank you for the awesome introduction. Hello, everybody. Welcome to all of you around the world, majority of you in South Africa, wherever you may be. You know what? Advertising imitates life. And we've all been going through the most of late. And I think today we're going to take it a little bit more on the light side. We're going to take a step back. We're going to find the funny and the humor, because I think that's what all of us are looking for today. If we go back about a year ago, we were in the same trenches, we were in the same space, just really trying to fight this thing, try and figure out where we're at. And as a brand, it's always a precarious position to be in, because you don't know where the line needs to be drawn between tone deafness and acceptance of your message. And I think that's always the most important thing that we're trying to strive to achieve. We want to maximize the opportunity to generate communication and results that are going to benefit the brands that we represent. So let's take it back. Let's look at the story. So there we were in the midst of a pandemic that never seemed to end. And the reality of the situation, there was a glimmer of hope, albeit a Caucasian Cape Town story of hope. There was a challenge within the oceans of the Western Cape. And this man, Craig Foster, he was out there taking a step back. He was taking an opportunity to really get out of the craziness, and he was spending time with an octopus. He was engaging with an ecosystem, with nature, with animals. And he was finding an opportunity to be able to reconnect with his surroundings. And I sat down and I thought, for once, there's a real opportunity to really be able to step back and just forget about all the craziness that's happening around us. And for about 80 minutes, I watched this fantastic tale of Craig Foster learning from his octopus teacher. And you know what? When I was sitting there with my wife and my mother-in-law, they were the two most skeptical individuals. And they said, listen, pal, if you wanted to leave your family and go swim with an octopus, we'd be pretty unhappy about that. So during lockdown, what I did was I used to spend a lot of time on my bike. And as things opened up and I could actually go and ride further and further into the free world, I used to spend a lot of time thinking and connecting the dots. And for me, I thought, here's an opportunity to tell an incredible spoof. And what I did was, I reached out to a friend of mine, Glenn, Beedham, and Pam. We'd worked with Creepy Crawly together a few years prior when he and Jason Goliath were breaking onto the comedic scene. This generated 100,000 views in our Creepy Wrangler Crocodile Hunter spoof. A few months prior to that, we've been speaking to Creepy Crawly about actually working on a Paralympic idea, a Paralympic story that had hope, that had inspiration. And obviously when the Olympics and the Paralympics had been forced to a halt, that idea also came to a conclusion. So stepping back, being on my bike, riding and bringing all these thoughts to life, what would be more magical than telling a spoof of my octopus teacher? So I got on the phone to Glenn. We bounced some ideas backwards and forwards. There was a script that was written. We sent some voice notes between each other. And off the back of that, Glenn came up with the most perfect Craig Foster spoof voice that was just so magical.
I remember the day when it all started, seeing this really strange thing, this incredible, rubbery, tangly, just majestic creature. A lot of people say that a creepy crawly is like an alien, but the strange thing is that we're so similar in so many ways, in looks, in movement, and often in intelligence as well. And I realized that I had to have a radical change in my life. And the only way to do this was to be in that pool with him. And then I had this crazy idea. What happens if I just went every day? Just the way that it moves, the way its pipe sort of never gets tangled. And then it disappears into the deep end. But then you just realize there's a line that can't be crossed. I saw it began to move up the side of the wall. And then it got to the surface and it just started to do that sucking thing that they do. And you want to reach out and pull it back underwater, but that would be interfering with the filter.
So there you go. It was one of those ideas that took a mixture of bravery, a bit of craziness, and also belief from the client. Fortunately, there was an opportunity where we'd worked together on prior projects and there'd been prior results. So there was that credibility, there was that trust, there was that relationship. But I think that, especially during a pandemic, when so many brands have had pandemic paralysis, this took an even extra level of courage and bravery to get to a space to be able to produce this with that trust and that hope that something positive can come out of the story. And I think in all situations, the matter and the means in which you're delivering communication, especially in our very nuanced market, we try to bounce ideas and test them with one another from within our own agency. Sure, it's only a group of 18 to 20 people, but it's a mixture of South Africans from all different backgrounds, shapes, and sizes. And by bouncing the idea of every one of them, they have the opportunity to say, listen, I totally get this idea, or for me, maybe it feels like you're talking like too much of an old white guy, Mike, and it's not going to resonate with the South African audience at large. And once again, there's also a timing opportunity. Is the timing right to release something like this on the market? And I think with all of these things that come together, we talk very much about virality and the science thereof. And I'm a huge believer that to make something go viral is actually a scientific experimentation. You have to have the remarkable content. You have to seed it to the right audience. With this one in particular, we took a very calculated decision to seed it via what we call influencers, or nano or micro influencers, people that don't have a huge following, but they look much more authentic by posting something that is a humorous piece of content that others would want to share. So there were two sources of the content shares, and then off the back of that, we tracked every single mention, like, engagement, retweet, share off the back of those. So we could see, oh, this person is important. They're the deputy editor of the report. Let's reach out and let's pitch the opportunity to tell the story and convert to an interview. Similar with potential TV stations, with producers, with radio personalities. For us, the world has obviously become so obsessed with influencers and influencer marketing, but the original influencers are the media. The journalists, they are the ones, they are the gatekeepers to hundreds of thousands or millions of eyeballs. And getting a piece of content onto primetime ENCA news is a very important tactic in generating that virality. So what we did was we took a very calculated and a very tsunami-like process in getting the word out there, sending original links, sending those YouTube links, reaching out to the producers that we have the relationships with. And as soon as you start generating one or two large pieces of coverage of mainstream media, you have the ability to complement both that online world of influence, but also that traditional media world of influence. And by getting on the phone, sending the WhatsApp, sliding into the DMs, these are all the tools and tactics that are necessary as a modern marketer. Because we can't just rely on the content being remarkable, we have to seed it to the right people. And when we put those two together, that's when we generate results. And for me, the most important results for this type of work is not just the eyeballs. It's not the vanity metrics. It's the impact on business and bottom lines. Especially in this day and age, in this fragile economy, we have to provide those opportunities and that value to our customers and the brands that we represent. So the tsunami continued. We generated a whole host of news clippings and media pieces of coverage. There was content from around the world. People were getting excited. Mexican blogs, Australian podcasts. It was all happening. It was all blowing up in a matter of minutes, hours, and less than a day. When Bruce Whitfield gives you this kind of compliment, everyone involved in this is quite deliciously mad. Brilliant. When Brendan Seri says, creepy crawly cleans up. And when Mexico says, a man falls in love with a pool cleaning machine, and it's the best campaign you'll see today. Obviously, there's a bit of give and take in that translation, but you totally understand. The results, like Tumi so graciously introduced me, we've made more brands go viral globally than any other agency in Africa. Think Nando's, think Rockamama's, but we have never seen impact on this scale in this period of time. And the results, they spoke for themselves. From concept to viral in 96 hours, a 20% increase in sales year on year, 2 billion people reached, thanks to some tracking from Talkwalker, and more than 5 million views. And that doesn't take into consideration the dark social media, the WhatsApps of the world. Because when that thing came around to me myself 4 or 5 times, forwarded many times, then you know. When your mom starts posting your content on Facebook and you haven't told her yet, that's when you know you've had an impact in that space. Arguably the most impactful PR campaign to originate from South Africa. It's the best performing campaign in Creepy Crawly's history, and then just a whole host of accolades to date.
2020 was extra. The national sentiment was overwhelmingly negative.
Well, the COVID-19 outbreak isn't showing any signs of easing down.
The continent may lose up to 20 million jobs.
That is, until a documentary dropped on Netflix about a Cape Townian befriending an octopus.
A new Netflix original documentary called My Octopus Teacher
has received 8 nominations for the Jackson Wild Media Award.
A lot of people say an octopus is like an alien, but you realize that we're very similar.
While everyone was talking about My Octopus Teacher, we decided to hijack the news and remind South Africa about the original, majestic creature of the deep. End.
And then I had this crazy idea.
What happens if I just went every day?
This unusual relationship has inspired a local comedian to create a spoof.
And he calls his My Creepy Teacher.
The hashtag My Creepy Teacher is a Creepy Crawly branded content piece that parodies My Octopus Teacher.
Now, this is for an automatic pool cleaner at the beginning of the summer season, so the timing is perfect. It's gone around the world. It's gone huge.
There's this hilarious guy who has the same voice, looks like the same kitchen. He goes in his pool and tries to bond with the creepy crawly.
That's really funny stuff. The video's already clocked up over 200,000 views in just under 10 hours.
From concept to viral in 96 hours. More than 5 million views. 0 paid media. Combined press and social media reach 2 billion people. 20% increase in product demand from pool department buyers countrywide.
So in the early part of my career, I spent a long time with this pool guy. He's fantastic. I'll give you his number after this if you want.
So there we go. There's just a snapshot of some of those results that were mentioned in the video. And I think that if we look back on this campaign, there were a lot of uniques. There were a lot of opportunities that you may possibly not be able to recreate again. But I think that whenever it comes to creating campaigns that have humor, Glenn said it in so many of his interviews, and I think this was one of the unique angles that we operated with. Instead of having a brand spokesperson, we injected Glenn himself into a lot of the speaking opportunities. He would go on primetime ENCA at 7 p.m. and when the reporter in studio asked him, Glenn, what does Craig Foster think of your spoof? Glenn would invariably turn it around and say, hang on a second, I didn't spoof Craig Foster. Craig Foster spoofed me. And I think that level of authenticity, transparency, it's a very risky move because a lot of brands wouldn't let the spokesperson from their campaign be the official spokesperson of the brand because of the potential corporate reputational damage that could ensue. But the trust was there. They let us run it. They let us take the opportunities in the spaces that we were experts, both from the content creation and the dissemination perspective. And then off the back of that, Glenn made very many references to the fact around spoofs. If you're going to create a spoof, it's very important that you don't make the subject the butt of the jokes. You shouldn't be laughing at them. It's very important to laugh with them. And I think that it is. If you look back at My Octopus Teacher, it's a very serious story. There's a lot of very serious issues and themes within that. And we were able to play in a space that even within the documentary filmmaking team, they celebrated and they enjoyed it. And arguably, I'd say there was a commensalistic relationship between the spoof and the original. We saw it when they won the Academy Award. There were another 20, 30, 45,000 views on the spoof after that award had been made. And we got tweets from Craig's team, from his wife even. They were all just really appreciative of the scenarios and the situations where we got to have fun, we got to play. So for me, I've got a phrase that I always like to say, life is short, play naked. And I think in this day and age, in this very difficult, complex, nuanced environment, we all need to take a step back and we all need to play a little more naked. Thanks very much. I'm at Mike Sharman.
Thank you, at Mike Sharman.